The Archons and Palpable Suffering. It is now the 11th of December, 2024. My name is Eric, and we're going to talk about why there's so much suffering in the world. I think most people spend a good amount of time in their lives. I'm not saying it's something we dwell on, and we wouldn't survive if we did. But we wonder why these terrible things happen. Now, certainly when we have a great loss in our family, something tragic, we're all affected by it, and it's very, very difficult to deal with, okay? And there will be really no joy in this world because everybody talks about happiness. Rich people are not happy. People always talk about that too. There will be no joy until there is equity in this world. And there are a group of beings, as far as I know, that really control all of this. They're not acknowledged by the church, but they are in some ways. Many people have heard of Nag Hammadi, or at least the Book of Thomas, right? The Book of Mary Magdalene, the Book of the Egyptians. These are Gnostic scriptures that were unearthed in Egypt in 1945. Nag Hammadi, a little bit more than halfway down the Egyptian Nile, heading south. You have Nag Hammadi, okay? So there's a kind of a little, it's like a hairpin turn. It's like a staple. On the cusp of the staple itself is Dendera. These are all inexplicable archaeological sites, yet our archaeology friends try to explain it to us, and they do a terrible job. They're kind of like listening to the State Department try to tell the truth. And so most people have to buy it because they're very forceful and they criticize people. They smear people who don't believe them as conspiracy theorists and all kinds of things like this, right? So, all right, so that's Dendera. It's on the cusp, okay? And on the north arm of it is Nag Hammadi. There's a museum there that exhibits all these great works where they were unearthed. And just fantastic. Straight due west from there, you would end up in Abydos, where the Temple of Seti I is located. The Temple of Seti I was built by Seti I and his son, Ramses the Great. Ramses the Great reigned for 66 years. He lived to be 90 or 91 years old. And this family was responsible for the redevelopment of Egypt to a large part. The father of Seti I was Ramses I. Okay? So there's a group of pillars in this temple, and most people know this iconic group of carvings, all right? So they're made out of stone, these pillars, and there are stone supports on the ceiling. And on one of them, it appears that there are two jet fighters. And some people say that one of them, because they're a little bit different, one of them is actually a submarine. And it's fascinating stuff. It really is. And you could see beyond any doubt, an Apache helicopter carved in there. And then there's also a tank, which some people say it could also be an amphibious vehicle as well. Okay, so come on all the way back to Dendera. And Seti I is buried just due south of it, and that's the Valley of the Kings. Farther south, you would end up in Luxor, formerly known as Thebes, where just outside of the city limits is the Temple of Karnak. All of these are incredible archaeological sites in Egypt. Now, head 150 miles south to Aswan and Aswan Quarry, where 8,000 tons of granite were extracted and transported 550 miles to the Giza Plateau. Okay, think about that. Now, we're told, and the archaeologists tell us, that they were transported on barges, right? Of course, as barges have buoyancy. That's the interesting thing about water and placing something that, a flat surface on top of water. It actually allows you to support great weight. Buoyancy is, anyway, we don't need to get into the science of buoyancy, but you understand. And I would say to that, this, okay? Did they perfectly cut and polish those stones, those granite stones, before they transported them or after? Think about that. I would say during, right? It would be an all-in-one process. This technology was extremely high, and it was the same technology used all over the world. The triangular wedges are the same all over the world. The knobs that archaeologists can't really explain on these giant stones. But we see it all over the world. Some of basically the construction, it's just like being an architect. It's a little bit different in design, but the fundamentals of the building are the same everywhere, okay? And so this is something they don't tell you. You know, on Easter Island, there were no trees even at that time, so that kind of blows out of the water their theory of rolling these things up the hill, these giant stones. So anyway, I want to finish up on this, and I'm going to talk about the archons, okay? But this is important because this is all stuff that is inexplicable, but seem to be so easily explained by our academic institutions and what they teach the herd animals or the farm animals. This is a people farm. I'll repeat that again. So, all right. So we're all the way down now where they extracted those stones at Aswan Quarry. We're going to travel way up to the Giza Plateau. 15 miles before we enter the Giza Plateau, we'll come through Saqqara. Saqqara, another incredible, I mean, so fascinating what Saqqara is. The Saqqara bird was found there and thought to be basically evidence that they had flight at that time, because the way the wing structure is constructed, it basically does tell us that this was dealing with air travel, right? Not just by a bird, because the wing structure is different on birds. So also we have a quartz cylinder that's perfectly cut and polished. Now we know that quartz, under the right conditions, can produce light and sound, all right? This in itself is quite fascinating. When you think about what travels through space, the images of everything we've done, it's light. The energy as well, all right? And the sound is also an energy. All right, so the most fascinating thing at Saqqara is the Serapeum at Saqqara. It's an underground tunnel complex, and it appears that the apertures of the complex are too small to accommodate the giant sarcophagi that are placed there in inlets, all right? Most of them constructed out of granite, and some of them are constructed out of basalt. There are 25 of them in total. You can actually look at a map of this if you like. And so this is Egypt. Okay, and there's no way to explain this. There are some inscriptions on these. I mean, if you look at how these things are carved out, all of this was done with incredibly high-tech machinery. These are very hard stones, okay? And, you know, you look at the way they actually remove the rock from the interiors, kind of like what they would have done at Kailash in India, right? And there's Kailash Mountain, which is very mysterious. But Kailash is basically a hill or a mountain carved out of stone. And there's just no way this is possible for this to be done. So, all right, let's talk about now the pain of the people here suffering. And we'll kind of lock this into the archons, and we'll show you how this makes a little bit more sense for those who have asked this question. Why are people meant to endure such pain, right? Why? And so we'll take a look at basically, let me take a drink of water here. All right. So pain is palpable. I think one of the things that people don't know, and the fact that we have these forces that control our physical world, the one mandate that is so powerful is never socialism, never anarchism, never communism. A small group of people must control the world through capitalism or feudalism, right? Or slavery. It's the same thing. There's no difference between any of these. The small group of people, I mentioned this before, you know, the upper class does none of the work and pays none of the taxes and gets almost all the money. The middle class does almost all the work, pays almost all the taxes and gets hardly any of the money. And the lower class is just there to scare the crud out of the middle class and keep them working, right? And that lower class, again, they will be our military. They will go and get blown up. They will be the garbage men. They will be the things that other people don't want to do. All of this is designed specifically for this reason. And, you know, Plato postulated his republic based on the guardians being at the top. And the guardians were the philosophers, okay? They weren't these psychopaths or, you know, sociopaths that we're seeing here in the world. And of course, you know, but they work their way in. If it's a profit-driven system, you can't avoid that. They will get so rich, they will take over the government, they will take over the politicians, they will control everything, and they'll create this facade that there's a president and there's a Congress and all of this. All of this is completely false. I mean, it's just a mirage. Okay, so let's continue to talk about this and explain it so that people really have an understanding of what's going on. And so none of this is real. And all these people do control everything. And we live in a world where war is continuous. We're blowing people up. You know, people are desensitized to this. I talked about this in my last video. And also people begin to accept this because they dehumanize people as being monsters, as being animals. We're all the same, guys. Everybody has the same desires in life. Republicans and Democrats are the same, but they're taught this is a dichotomy of ideologies that keeps people furious at each other over simple little ideological beliefs, right? But again, ideologies are constructed. Okay, I explained this with Walter Lippmann, how these specialists actually control all of us. And it's so easy to do that. Again, creating these indelible impressions, getting people to emotionally invest themselves in one area, this focus on it. Okay, but the fact of the matter is, as I said, until we have socialism, communism, anarchism, until we have some sort of an equitable system, there will never be joy in the world, okay? Because the rich, no matter how rich they become, we all have this subconscious level where we can feel the palpable, right? It's there. The suffering is shared by everyone, whether it's on a conscious or a subconscious level. Most of us phase it out, so even if we're not rich and we're not the ones that are causing it, most of the time we don't think about the wars that are getting here. Can you imagine if your kids just were blown up right in front of you and their limbs were all over and they were crying, they were still alive, their faces are gone, whatever it is. I mean, this is what we do as human beings, and it seems inexplicable, okay? So what we're going to, and I want to remind everybody, there will be no happiness. There just will not be, all right? You can't escape this because it is something that is part of our makeup. It's in the ethos. It is an energy field, and we are part of this. We are made from this, okay? So let's talk about the archons. The archons supposedly, I mean, again, nobody knows exactly, and I haven't been able to read the scriptures. I mean, the real scriptures are exhibited, as I said, in Nag Hammadi. Okay, so supposedly they won a war about 2,000 years ago. They live in darkness. They're in the kingdom of darkness. There are 7 of them, okay, in particular. There are other beings, and so this gets very complex. But the 7 is very, very important. 7 archons, 7 gods, and the 7 archons are all connected to 7 different planets. So you know that the Romans actually, they worshipped Saturn, right? The god Saturn. And Saturnalia was an event that it was a week-long event, right? Which they would have rapes and brutal treatings of people. People would just go crazy. There would just be these riots. They would wreck everything, this wild orgies. And nobody would be held responsible for this, right? It would all be rebuilt at the end. Now, Saturn was, I think, deposed by his youngest son, who was Jupiter. Okay, so the other 2 sons were Neptune and Pluto, all right? So I know this is, to some people might seem out there, but these are real stories. People tend to attribute all of this to mythology, as if a myth is a myth. A myth has an origin from reality, just like everything. Nothing is made up, okay? If something is made up, it's because it already exists, and it exists in our mind. If you close your eyes and you look and you see all of these things, you can imagine all kinds of things. They're all real. Everything is real. They're images of existence on different planes, different dimensions, and so we are connected to all of this, all right? And again, it seems far out, but I'm gonna bring it back down to earth now, okay? So let's talk briefly about the Vatican. So most people don't know, but the Vatican was founded as a state, really a country, right? States are countries, countries are states, in 1929. The first thing they did was crash the stock market. Bernardino Nogara was their primary stockbroker, and that's what they do. They control finance all over the world. The rich people that own the churches during the Crusades are the people in the Vatican. They are rich beyond what you could even imagine. The Medicis and the Orsinis produced 9 popes between them. And I mean, this is an all-in-the-family thing. And you have to understand that these bloodlines that we hear about all over the world, like in 1916, you had Tsar Nicholas II, who was 3rd cousins to Kaiser Wilhelm II in Germany, and they were both 1st cousins to George V in Great Britain. Okay, this is a great example because it's a very important event that happened during the Sykes-Picot Agreement, and that I won't get into now because this is separate videos, okay? So, only understanding this number 7 is really, really important. So the Vatican was built on a hill, and Rome was built on 7 hills. Remember, 7 archons, 7 planets, right? 7 gods. I mean, again, this number 7 is in everything, all right? So Winston Churchill worked for the Vatican. His name means Vatican, church on a hill, okay? Paul Warburg, who signed the Federal Reserve Act in 1913 on December 23rd with Woodrow Wilson, said that you will have a one-world government. Whether you like it or not, it's just a question of how it will be arrived at, either by consent or by conquest. And of course, consent is conquest of the human mind. All the people support the wars. Walter Lippmann made sure of that. When people found out that the banks were, of course, financing both sides in all these wars, and the corporations that were also owned by the same owners were supplying both sides, because this is a big business and it feeds the archons. The archons feed not on food, but on intense emotions, all right? That's what they feed on. And again, they are the constructors of the physical world that we live in today, all right? And they were not accepted. They did not accept the governance, perhaps as it's told, of God, right? Yahweh. And if this is correct, I mean, we don't know, but the point is, and I haven't, like I said, I haven't been able to travel to Nag Hammadi to actually personally look at the real, the authentic, right, documents, the scriptures, the Gnostic scriptures. So, all right, so what does Paul Warburg's name mean, right? Paul Warburg's name means exactly what he said. It means a one-world government taken by conquest, all right? War is war, of course, and Berg means basically a moat that surrounds something, or a wall that surrounds something in its entirety, all right? So, again, a one-world government arrived at either by consent or by conquest. Okay, so we're traveling and moving right along here now. We know that this key number 7 is really important. Now, the patron saint of Mexico was the Emperor of Mexico in 1823 when he divided and really disconnected something called Central America from Mexico. And it's 7 countries: Honduras, Belize, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Panama, Nicaragua, El Salvador. Okay? Follow me on this now. We're going to take a little bit of a ride, because all these countries that are so important today, and a lot of things, period, that are important. As a matter of fact, if you look at the numbers that Germany is so involved in this with the Roman Catholic Church. So if you take a look at Germany, they colonized 7 countries, all right? And they were all in Africa. And let's see if I can remember these. So it was, Burundi, Rwanda, Togo, Ghana, Cameroon, Tanzania, and Namibia, okay? Those are a little bit harder, but it's 7 countries. And this is in direct contact and connection with the Roman Catholic Church. If you look up the connection, you will find it, okay? So I'll try to travel a little faster through this so we can kind of get the gist of it, okay? So, all right, let's go to Africa and what I was just talking about. So let's go to Niger. Very important right now, because Niger is cutting off France and Great Britain from colonialism, okay? And working along with them is Mali and Burkina Faso. So the president of Burkina Faso is Traoré. He's 36. He's the youngest president in the world. And, they're throwing out the miners, the gold miners, all of this. It's just fantastic what they're doing. But, there's so much chaos going on in the world right now. It's hard for the colonialists to have a grip on everything. And this is the key time for all these countries that have been victimized to break through, okay? So Niger is bordered by 7 countries, all right? Algeria, Libya, Mali, Chad, Burkina Faso, Benin, and Nigeria, okay? So it's Algeria and Nigeria. I didn't say Nigeria twice. All right, so let's move on here. Now, remember, the stands are important. They built the stands, and the stands actually are sending terrorists, the Uyghur terrorists. There's a lot of great Uyghurs that love China. They live in China. There's no genocide in China. This was so disproven 5 years ago, and exposed the State Department and the National Endowment of Democracy made them look like fools. They hired all these Uyghurs. They worked for the National Endowment for Democracy. And so, I mean, this is just terrible, okay? So keep in mind, that's what they do. They send the terrorists over to Syria, and some of them are Uyghurs. A lot of them are ISIS. They're Daesh, and they're al-Nusra Front. All of these, again, they're products of the Mujahideen that the United States created in 1979 to try and destroy Russia. Through Afghanistan, okay? That would become Al-Qaeda, Taliban, al-Nusra Front, ISIS, and all these other many, many groups. All right, so let's look at them. There are 7 of those stands, all right? Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. All right, very, very important. Now, Pakistan is a nuclear power right next to India, and India now also has 7 countries that border it. China, Myanmar, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bhutan, Nepal, and Bangladesh, all right? So, to the south of India, now you can make an argument here, connected to India by way of the Adams Bridge, thought to be either a man-made construct or a natural rock formation, is the island nation of Sri Lanka. And then to the south of that, the Maldives island chain. All right. So we will continue on here. And again, there's plenty of 7s. They're all over the place. These are the key places. Poland is so intricate and important right now. You have to understand India is so important with regard to the economy and BRICS and so much of the political landscape, geopolitical landscape. So, all right, so let's take a look at Poland. Poland is bordered by 7 countries again, and one of them is Russia, one of them is Ukraine. All right, think about that. All right. Kaliningrad, it really has properties of an enclave and an enclave, all right? So it's wedged between Lithuania and Poland. So Kaliningrad is the first country. So Kaliningrad, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, Germany, Czech Republic, and Slovakia, all right? Ukraine is bordered by 7 countries. This is all by design, guys. Understand that. This is by design. Okay, so what are the countries that border Ukraine? To the east, Russia. To the north, Belarus. To the west, Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia. To the south, Romania and Moldova. There are so many connections to the Vatican and the archons and everything else in this. I don't think I'll have time to get into everything in this video because we're already almost at 23 minutes. 22 minutes and 20 seconds. But I just want to tell everybody, look, it all boils down in a way to answering this question is, why do these terrible things have to happen? Why do these beings that constructed the physical world, why do they feed on emotion, on high intensity emotion? And what is it about the darkness, the battle between the darkness and the light? And which is really good? This is a question, because when you look at yin-yang and you look at alternating opposites, it's represented by the light and the darkness, okay? And also gender, right? The man and the woman. And we understand that these archons are in many ways androgynous. Some of them are just purely male, but in general, they're considered androgynous, okay? Both sexes. And they did have sex with female women. Supposedly, it was the archons that had sex with Eve. And so there are so many facets to this information. And there's so much of it out there. But I just want to throw out to everybody, one of the also key components of this is capitalism. Capitalism does mean war and death. That's what it means. A profit-driven system means that nobody stops. They take everything from it. Read a book on business and capitalism. They tell you to step on your own family members. If you want to make it, you got to be tough, right? This is not the way that the world should work. If we have an equitable system, just keep in mind that life on Earth and everywhere else is a collective force. If I have to go back to Descartes did a comparative analysis of the human body to a clock. Obviously, he was a mathematician and philosopher that was born in France in 1596. This is an incredible analysis. It really is, because we are all working parts in everything. And if we want to function at optimal capacity, right, we need joy, we need happiness, we need harmony, okay? Because otherwise, rather than oscillating, we vacillate, and everything becomes chaotic. And so I hope this makes sense to everybody, because if you want fluidity and continuity and happiness and joy and all the things that people could have, it's very difficult in the physical world. We have to recognize all these human innate proclivities, right? Like greed and lust. These are innate in us. They are instilled, embedded into the human being. But we do have, as Freud told us, the split between the intellect and the emotion. And we do have the opportunity to utilize the intellect to create a more equitable society. And so that's why we have been taught to demonize things like socialism, communism, and anarchism. And the most amazing thing here is that 99.9% of the people who hate socialism, communism, and anarchism have no idea what they are. No idea. If you were to ask them and say, well, I'd like to learn a little bit since you have this opinion, maybe you can explain the fundamental principles of these economic systems. And they would be like, one's bad and one's good. That's what it would be. And when I explain the five pioneers of modern day cognitive conditioning and mass hypnosis, this accounts for all of this, right? Because as I said before, the three primary, and these are in other videos, the three primary outlets for propaganda are academia, media, and politicians. And then we have these people around us that parrot everything, our peers, and that basically reinforces these false belief systems. And people live in an entirely false world. And the fact is, once they have constructed your fundamental belief systems, everything that stretches out from that, even the superficial thoughts, are constructs, right? They're not really you. And so we need to find ourselves. This is what this, there was a movie called They Live where the guy puts on the glasses and he can see the real world. Bruce Lee and James Coburn and Sterling Silliphant wrote a movie called Circle of Iron. It was originally entitled The Silent Flute. And at the end, he finds this book that he's searching for that has all the answers to all life's questions. And then, when he gets his teacher, who's David Carradine, and they're up on the mountain looking over this incredible backdrop, he says, "You saw the book, Cord?" He says, "Yes." Cord said, "Yes." He said, "What did you see?" He said, "Everything." And what he saw was himself. It was a book of mirrors, right? Leo Tolstoy said we all want to change the world, but too few of us are willing to change ourselves. All right? And just remember the great quote by Orwell. The further a society drifts from truth, the more it hates those who speak it. And that's why they're jailed. That's why Martin Luther King was killed on April 4th of 1968. And Malcolm X was killed on February 21st of 1965. And who was that other guy? Fred Hampton was killed on December 4th of 1969. This cycle just repeats itself, right? Do good. Look what happened to JFK. He refused to accept 9/11, which was proposed to him first. Look it up, Operation Northwoods. The official documents were released after 30 years. And that was inspired by the Levant affair in Israel in 1954. So, all right, that should do it for today. And I hope everybody enjoyed the video. Thanks so much. Bye-bye now.